Chapter 316. Every strike draws blood. Yili activated his swift steps and disappeared from the spot, leaving only an afterimage. His speed had reached an astonishing level. The 50-plus crazy bulls couldn't react in time. By the time they realized it, Yili was already in front of them. This time, Yili didn't use any skills, because he felt that this kind of slaughter was unsatisfying. Yili lifted the dragon-slaying blade and swung it horizontally. There were no dazzling sword lights. It was a plain and unadorned strike. The sword hit one of the crazy bulls squarely. Ollie, the dragon-slaying blade was incredibly sharp. The crazy bull who was struck let out a blood-curdling scream as his body was cleaved in two. The crazy bulls were horrified and stared in fear at this gruesome scene. Yili didn't stop after the first strike. He continued with 13 more slashes, each one slicing through the air. 13 more crazy bulls fell victim to the dragon-slaying blade. These crazy bulls couldn't withstand Yili's dragon-slaying blade. The blade moved with precision, and before they could react, several more of them lay dead on the ground. Attack! Finally, a fifth-tier crazy bull reacted and shouted loudly. The remaining 20-plus crazy bulls and zombies immediately attacked Yili. However, even without using any skills, Yili wasn't someone they could contend with. It could be said that even if Yili stood still and let them attack, the crazy bulls and zombies wouldn't be able to break through his defenses. This was the gap in raw power. Did they really think that Yili's attribute points from opening zombie chests every day were useless? Now Yili's defense, if compared to martial arts novels, was like having an impregnable golden bell, unbreakable iron cloth, and the invincibility of the 13 tough techniques. Every waving of his knife cut a white mark, and every slash of his sword stabbed a white spot. The remaining 20 or so crazy bulls and hundreds of zombies had approached Yili. At this moment, Yili's hair fluttered without any wind. His handsome face was full of smiles, and he looked like a god that stood between the heavens and earth in ancient times. Swish! Yili waved the dragon-slaying blade, which carried 1,000 levels of killing intent and an invincible aura. In an instant, hundreds of zombies melted into nothingness. When the more than 20 crazy bulls saw this scene, it was as if they had seen the most miserable torture on the 1,800th level of the inferno. They began to escape crazily at the fastest speed in history. Yili didn't chase them. If he did, these crazy bulls would have no chance of survival. What he needed to do was not only start a shocking massacre, but also make the crazy bulls afraid. Xiaxi looked at Yili's peerless figure from the side. Her heart was almost jumping out of her chest. She didn't know why she felt this way. She really didn't. Yili revealed his side profile and looked at Xiaxi indifferently. Let's go. Xiaxi came back to her senses when she heard this, only to find that Yili and the Apocalypse Legion had already walked more than 10 steps away. It seemed that every time she came back to her senses, Yili had already walked 10 steps away. It seemed that no matter what Yili did, she would be shocked. Yili suddenly halted his steps because he remembered something. A cold smile played at the corner of his lips. Go to different directions and kill the crazy bulls and zombies. Yili issued orders to the Apocalypse Legion. Chapter 317. Preparing for a grand display after giving orders to the Apocalypse Legion. Ada, by Wawa, Hongye, Yutong, Swordsmanship, and Bone Maiden headed in different directions. Including himself, Yili was preparing for a grand display involving all 7 of them. Then, Yili continued to use his heavenly spirit eyes to scout. This time, as he observed, a faint smile appeared on his elegant face. An 8th-tier crazy bull led a group of over 100 crazy bulls. They had not formed a team with the zombies. These crazy bulls were of slightly higher tier, mostly at the 4th-tier level, with over a dozen 5th-tier members among them. Meanwhile, the 20-plus crazy bulls who had fled earlier were heading towards the 8th-tier crazy bull. Yili walked calmly in one direction, with Xiaxi following closely. The 20-plus crazy bulls were running for their lives, regretting not having 4 legs. When they saw the team led by the 8th-tier crazy bull, they breathed a sigh of relief, as if they had found a lifeline. What's going on? The 8th-tier crazy bull quickly asked. As second leader, we just encountered Demon King Yili, But, the one speaking was a 5th-tier crazy bull who was terrified beyond words. But what? The 8th-tier crazy bull snapped. Demon King Yili is too terrifying. The 5th-tier crazy bull was about to cry. Then he recounted what had just happened. The Tier 8 crazy bull dark race member was shocked. Is what you said true? Demon King Yili held the dragon-slaying blade and killed hundreds of zombies in an instant? Second leader, it's absolutely true. I can swear that I've never seen a terrifying existence like Yili. It's too terrifying. The 5th-tier crazy bull broke into a cold sweat as he spoke. Trash. The level 8 crazy bull scolded. The Tier 8 crazy bull narrowed his eyes. In that case, the Demon King Yili was nearby. As soon as he raised his head and looked straight ahead, his pupils couldn't help but constrict. A young man slowly walked over. He was handsome and carried a cold knife on his shoulder. Behind him was a girl. Who else could that young man be but Yili? Who else could the girl be but Xiaxi? Demon King Yili? The Tier 8 crazy bull stared at Yili and said, "That's right." Yili stopped and nodded. The Tier 8 crazy bull looked at the knife on Yili's shoulder. He could tell even with his toes that this must be the dragon-slaying blade, one of the ancient 10 great divine weapons. Heaven has a road, but you don't take it. Hell has no door, but you barge right in. Demon King Yili, I didn't expect to catch you so easily. The 8th-tier crazy bull sneered. The knife on your shoulder must be the dragon-slaying blade. Where is the heavenly tower? The 8th-tier crazy bull continued. Yili smiled calmly. Do you want to see the heavenly tower? The 8th-tier crazy bull replied. Of course. All right, then I'll grant your wish, Yili said casually. With that, Yili retrieved the heavenly tower from the system space. A 7-layered quaint black tower appeared in Yili's hand. Upon seeing the 7-layered tower in Yili's hand, everyone was shocked. Wasn't this one of the ancient 10 divine weapons, the heavenly tower? Xiaxi was also astonished. She had heard of the ancient 10 divine weapons, and many factions had been searching for them without success. Yet Yili possessed both the dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower alone. Chapter 318. Why didn't you catch the heavenly tower? A greedy look appeared on the face of the 8th-tier crazy bull. Yili, hand over the dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower, and it'll leave you with your whole body, the 8th-tier crazy bull said with a sly grin. Yili smiled inwardly. Although this 8th-tier crazy bull had the same tier as him, there was still quite a gap between them. He possessed 2 divine weapons, the 3rd level of the ancient devil tome, and SSS grade genes. A mere 8th-tier crazy bull dared to be so arrogant in front of him? I'd love to give them to you, but you have to have the ability to catch them first, Yili said with a hint of helplessness on his handsome face. Of course I have the ability. The 8th-tier crazy bull was filled with pride. Yili pondered for a moment and then said, if you can catch them, then I'll give them to you. With that, Yili tossed the heavenly tower into the air and slowly said, Purgatory suppression suppress. The heavenly tower instantly grew in size, and countless streaks of crimson lightning shot out. These crazy bulls had no chance to react. Boom! A deafening explosion shook the heavens. The crazy bulls instantly panicked. The 8th-tier crazy bull, and over a dozen 5th-tier crazy bulls managed to dodge this attack. But their eyes were wider than they had ever been in their lives. How is this possible? The 8th-tier crazy bull couldn't help but exclaim, completely shocked. He had thought. I never intend to take back the things one send out. Why didn't you catch the heavenly tower? Yili said slowly. The 8th-tier crazy bull, and the dozen or so 5th-tier crazy bulls were now trembling in fear, unable to utter a word. Since you didn't catch the heavenly tower, does that mean you're prepared to catch the dragon-slaying blade? In the midst of the 8th-tier crazy bull's shock, Yili's words reached his ears. His eyes widened even further, and when he looked at Yili, he saw Yili leaping into the air, landing a few steps away from him. Primordial Demon Slash. As soon as he finished speaking, the dragon-slaying blade slashed down heavily. 3,000 demon and god phantoms burst out, moving at lightning speed. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion rang out. The dozen or so 5th-tier crazy bulls couldn't withstand the power of the primordial demon slash, and were turned into nothingness. Now only one crazy bull remained, the 8th tier crazy bull. The 8th tier crazy bull dared to swear that he had never been so afraid before in his life. His entire body trembled uncontrollably, and the fear penetrated his very soul. Yi Li's face remained calm, showing no signs of emotion. However, a hint of disappointment lingered in his heart. He never intended to take back the things he gave away, but since this 8th tier crazy bull didn't want them, he had no choice but to take them back. After putting the heavenly tower back into the system's space, he held the dragon-slaying blade and walked slowly toward the 8th tier crazy bull. Seeing Yi Li walking towards him, the 8th tier crazy bull couldn't help but be horrified, as if he had seen an evil ghost trying to kill him. Demon King Yi Li, what do you want? The 8th tier crazy bull looked at Yi Li in horror. Yi Li stopped a few steps away from the crazy bull. After thinking for a moment, he said, I don't want to do anything except to kill you. When the 8th tier crazy bull heard this, he couldn't help but take 3 steps back in fright. The horror on his face was indescribable. Chapter 319. Death of the 8th tier crazy bull. Yi Li, I am the second leader of the crazy bull tribe. If you kill me, our leader will never let you go. The 8th tier crazy bull still wanted to threaten Yi Li. Unfortunately, his wishful thinking was doomed to fail. I hate it the most when someone threatens me, but there's always someone who does. Yi Li spoke slowly. In his eyes, humans and dark race members were no different. Our leader is in the 9th tier. And we also have the leader of the heavy sword-wielding undead here. Demon King Yi Li, have you really thought this through? Yi Li had already guessed that the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead had fled to this location. Even if he hadn't guessed, his expression wouldn't have changed. Not only have one thought it through, but I've also thought it through thoroughly. One Yi Li, want to kill you as easily as slaughtering pigs and dogs. Now I'm going to kill you. Are you ready? Oh. A hint of playfulness appeared on Yi Li's face. Upon hearing Yi Li's words, the 8th tier crazy bull was instantly scared out of his wits. He never expected that even his threats couldn't reach Yi Li. Then the 8th tier crazy bull's expression turned cold as he stared at Yi Li. Demon King Yi Li, 1 am an 8th tier dark race member. One can drag you to die with me. He knew that Yi Li would never spare him, so he had to threaten Yi Li again. Many people hoped for a desperate struggle, but often, while the fish might die, the net remained unbreakable. Yi Li hated it the most when someone threatened him, and this 8th tier crazy bull had threatened him twice in a row. Even if he didn't want to kill this 8th tier crazy bull, he had to. Suddenly, the 8th tier crazy bull raised a stone axe and swung it down at Yi Li. Crazy bulls possessed immense physical strength, and their arms had enormous strength. But compared to Yi Li, no matter who it was, the difference was too great. Just as the huge stone axe was about to smash into Yi Li, he raised the dragon-slaying blade and struck out with a slash. Clang! The dragon-slaying blade and the stone axe collided heavily. Without a doubt, the stone axe in the hand of the crazy bull shattered and fell to the ground, turning into a pile of rubble. The crazy bull was horrified when he saw this, and he turned to flee. However, no matter how hard he tried to escape, he couldn't escape from the palm of Yi Li's hand. Yi Li activated his swift steps, and his speed instantly skyrocketed. Swish! The speed of the swift steps was incredibly fast. The 8th tier crazy bull was still trying to flee for his life, and he had no defense or reaction at all. A glimmer of cold light struck the 8th tier crazy bull, and in an instant he was killed. From the moment the dragon-slaying blade fell to the moment it was retrieved, the whole process flowed smoothly, taking less than a second. At the same time, Ada by Wawa, Hongya, Yutong Swordsmanship, and Bone Maiden had already sprung into action throughout the ruined city. The crazy bulls were terrified and fled at the first sign of danger. The 9th tier crazy bull and the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead were waiting for news at a certain location. Suddenly, more than a dozen 6th tier crazy bulls rushed over. Leader! Leader! These dozen or so 6th tier crazy bulls shouted in fear, as if they had never been so terrified before. What's going on? The 9th tier crazy bull asked hurriedly. Leader, something big is happening. Then, a 6th tier crazy bull spoke out with some astonishing news. Chapter 320. The zombies approached these dozen six-tier crazy bulls, were leading a team in search of Yi Li's whereabouts, when they encountered the Apocalypse Legion. After narrating their encounter, all the dark race members present couldn't help but take in a cold breath. 6 purple gold-eyed zombies, 9th tier zombies? The 9th tier crazy bull couldn't help but take in a cold breath. Zombies with a level higher than that of dark race members were uncontrollable, but zombies wouldn't attack dark race members either. The tier 9 heavy sword-wielding undead smiled bitterly. The Apocalypse Legion controlled by Demon King Yi Li is different. Now it seems that Demon King Yi Li is too terrifying. Skeleton brother, what do you mean? The 9th tier crazy bull asked. In the Apocalypse Legion, there are 6 zombies. God Fist Zombie Ada, Ironfoot Zombie Bai Wawa, Frost Zombie Hongya, Petrification Zombie Yutong, Ghost Sword Zombie Swordsman Achi, and Devouring Zombie Bone Maiden. When Demon King Yi Li came to my Abyssal Gorge, only God Fist Zombie Ada, Ironfoot Zombie Bai Wawa, and Frost Zombie Hongya were 8th tier zombies. Now they have all become 9th tier zombies. The 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead didn't need to say any more. The rest of the conversation was self-evident. Upon hearing this, the 9th tier crazy bull became restless. Skeleton brother, are you saying? The 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead wore a bitter smile again. That's right, one think we are all overestimating ourselves. We've provoked someone who is neither human, nor a dark race member. He is Demon King Yi Li. The high-leveled crazy bulls present looked at each other, their faces filled with shock. Leader, the zombies are here. Suddenly, a loud shout interrupted them, and the dark race members immediately looked in the direction of the voice. They saw 6 zombies approaching from different directions. One was draped in a red cloak, 9 meters tall, with golden short hair, wearing silver-pointed knuckle gloves, and exuding an imposing aura. One looked young, about 12 or 13 years old, with fair skin but a wide and plump body. If you put him on a scale, he would weigh close to 200 caddies. One was dressed in a fiery red robe, tall and slim, with a natural beauty and flawless skin. One was wearing a white princess dress, with a porcelain doll-like appearance, incredibly cute. One held a pitch-black sword in hand, the edge of the sword sharp and awe-inspiring. One was dressed in a misty floral dress, with her long black hair cascading to her waist, like a celestial being descending to the mortal realm. The Apocalypse Legion. The 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead couldn't help but shout. These 6 zombies approached from different directions. What else could they be but the Apocalypse Legion? The 9th tier crazy bull widened his eyes, and as expected, he saw that all of them had purple golden eyes. He hadn't seen them with his own eyes before, but now that he saw them, the 9th tier crazy bull couldn't help but be shocked. The 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead was even more frightened. He thought that if the Apocalypse Legion had appeared, then Demon King Yi Li, that man, should also have arrived. As expected, just as the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead had expected, Yi Li and a young girl had already come into his view. The Demon King, Yi Li. At this moment, there were no words to describe the horror of the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead. Yi Li slowly walked to the front of the Apocalypse Legion and looked at the tier 9 heavy sword-wielding undead casually. I haven't seen you for a few days. Do you still remember me? Chapter 321. Find a place to hide. The 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead would never forget Yi Li. He and Yi Li had a deep-seated enmity, like water and fire, with hatred as vast as the 3 rivers and 4 seas. Yi Li, the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead, clenched his teeth tightly, as if his teeth were about to shatter. The 9th tier crazy bull looked Yi Li up and down. This was his first time seeing Demon King Yi Li. Earlier, the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead had described Yi Li as if he were a legendary figure. Are you Demon King Yi Li? The 9th tier crazy bull stared at Yi Li and asked. Yes. Yi Li nodded. Upon hearing this, the 9th tier crazy bull's expression turned cold. Although the Apocalypse Legion consisted entirely of 9th tier zombies, there were tens of thousands of crazy bulls. What gave Yi Li the right to remain so calm in front of him? Yi Li, I heard that you have 2 divine weapons, the dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower. I also heard that you are a demon who can even fly. Are you really so powerful? The Tier 9 Crazy Bull sneered. Even if the 6 zombies in the Apocalypse Legion were all Tier 9. So what? He was not afraid at all. The fear he had shown earlier was simply because he was surprised that the zombies would attack Dark Race members. Yili smiled faintly. Although there were many crazy bulls, they were nothing before him. Zhao Yun had entered and exited Changbampo 7 times, moving freely among hundreds of thousands of troops. Today, he wanted to compare with Zhao Yun, ready to take the enemy's head from among the 10,000 troops, as if plucking fruit from a bag. Demon King Yi Li, now hand over the dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower. You have nothing left to hesitate about. The 9th tier Crazy Bull stared at Yi Li. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Yi Li and the Apocalypse Legion dared to confront a dark race tribe like this. It was intolerable. Xiaxi was deeply shocked. At this moment, there were simply too many dark race members standing in front of her, numbering in the tens of thousands. At the same time, she understood a piece of truth, which was that she didn't know the height of the sky and the width of the earth before. She was just a speck of dust in the world. But she actually dared to come to the inner area of the Falling Rock mountain range to find the heart of darkness. Yi Li smiled faintly. He looked at the 9th tier Crazy Bull and said slowly, "You really want my dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower?" The dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower were both one of the 10 great divine weapons. By gathering all the 10 great divine weapons, one could pry into a shocking secret. Since ancient times, no one had ever gathered all the 10 great divine weapons. Of course I want your dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower. You'll die today anyway no matter if you hand them over or not. The level 9 Crazy Bull said arrogantly. The Tier 9 heavy sword-wielding undead also stared at Yi Li. If it weren't for Yi Li, he wouldn't have been like a stray dog. Yi Li, next year today will be the anniversary of your death. The Tier 9 heavy sword-wielding undead also said coldly to Yi Li. Yi Li was slightly stunned when he heard that. He thought that the strength of this heavy sword-wielding undead race was about the same as that of the Crazy Bull Dark race. Then why did this Tier 9 heavy sword-wielding undead run when he went to the Abyssal Gorge? Did this Tier 9 heavy sword-wielding undead think that he could kill me with the help of the Crazy Bull Dark race? Or was he just bragging? Silence, a deathly silence. The Crazy Bulls were only waiting for their leader's command, and they would all attack together. Yi Li looked at Xiaxi calmly and said, "When the fight breaks out later, find a place to hide. In the Falling Rock mountain range, good people don't die, and neither do bad people. Only foolish people die. I hope you're not one of the foolish ones." Chapter 322. Capture the leader. First, upon hearing Yi Li's words, Xiaxi nodded. She knew that she had no power to resist in such a battle. Yi Li looked at the 9th tier Crazy Bull and the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead. He spoke calmly. "At this point, what is there left for you to hesitate about? Come at me." With those words, Yi Li gestured with his finger towards the 9th tier Crazy Bull and the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead. The 9th tier Crazy Bull seethed with anger. As the leader of the Crazy Bull race, he had never suffered such humiliation. Attack! In response to the command of the 9th tier Crazy Bull, countless Crazy Bulls charged towards the Apocalypse Legion like a dark storm. Yi Li and the Apocalypse Legion stood still like statues. He took out the dragon-slaying blade from his system space and rested it on his shoulder, his face as composed as ever. The 9th tier Crazy Bull sneered, thinking that even if Demon King Yi Li and the Apocalypse Legion were powerful, they couldn't withstand the wrath of the Crazy Bull army. The 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead also sneered. After the brief moment earlier, he had figured it all out. Now, he wanted Yi Li to know what true regret felt like. As the countless Crazy Bulls were about to attack, Yi Li also gave the order. Kill. Just one word, neither more nor less. With that, the Apocalypse Legion shot out, moving at a speed that was astonishing. A giant fist from Ada, combined with attacks from wind, rain, thunder and lightning. By Wawa's Chilan foot swept horizontally, terrifying in its power. Hongya filled the sky like snowflakes, as she unleashed her frigid true energy from her palms. Yutong petrified her enemies, emitting a burst of radiant energy. Swordsman Achi unleashed his death-dealing triple ghost sword, and the ghost sword 13 styles. Bone Maiden devoured her foes with her great devouring technique. Yili knew that there were too many crazy bulls, and his goal now was to capture the enemy leader's head from among the 10,000 troops. Suddenly, Yili activated his swift steps. The speed of the SSS-class swift steps was so fast that it couldn't be captured by the naked eye. In an instant, Yili had reached the side of the 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead. Yili was currently at the 8th-tier level, and there was almost no chance of defeating 2 9th-tier dark race members. Therefore, when Yili activated the swift steps, he had already bought a berserk potion from the Point Mall. He consumed the berserk potion and activated the 3rd level of the ancient demon tome. Instantly, a demonic aura enveloped Yili, making him look like an invincible demon. The 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead hadn't reacted yet when Yili raised his dragon-slaying blade. A cold glint appeared first, followed by a slash like a dragon. Swish! The berserk potion could increase the strength of a genetic warrior by 10 times, but the side effects were quite obvious. During the time in Abandoned City, Yili had fallen into a coma for a year after drinking 10 of them. With his dragon-slaying blade held high, Yili struck with a single blow. The 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead were 1 level higher than Yili, so they hurriedly dodged. In the end, the strike did not land on them. Demon King Yili, you are seeking death. The 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead sneered. In his eyes, Yili without the Apocalypse Legion was not a threat. Unfortunately, Yili had already consumed a berserk potion. Brother Crazy Bull, let's attack together and take the dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower from Yili's hands. The 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead looked at the 9th-tier crazy bull. Good, today, Demon King Yili will die on the spot. The 9th-tier crazy bull declared coldly. Chapter 323. Fighting 2 9th-tier dark race members alone immediately, the 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead launched a fierce attack on Yili. The 9th-tier crazy bull wielded a star-studded stone axe, while the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead brandished a 1,000-catty heavy sword. The demonic energy from the 3rd level of the ancient demon tome had already been pushed to the extreme by Yili. The aura around him and the dragon-slaying blade became even more intense. Just as the attacks from the 9th-tier crazy bull's star-studded stone axe and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead's 1,000-catty heavy sword were about to hit Yili, he swung the dragon-slaying blade. Clang! The star-studded stone axe, heavy sword, and dragon-slaying blade collided heavily. These were weapons used by 9th-tier dark race members, and they weren't cut down by the dragon-slaying blade in a single blow. Following that, the 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead increased their strength. However, it was simply absurd that they tried to compare strength with Yili. After all, had Yili's strength not improved significantly after opening the zombie treasure chests for so long? Coupled with the berserk potion, Yili's strength had reached a terrifying level. Is this all the strength you have? Yili said lightly. The 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead were taken aback. They hadn't expected Yili's strength to be so astonishing. As 9th-tier dark race members themselves, they had planned to overpower Yili with their strength. However, Yili's calm demeanor in the face of their attack surprised them. As the saying goes, one real strong man can defeat 1,000,000 troops. Yili took a few steps back, raising the dragon-slaying blade high and coldly announcing, Flame Blade Technique. Countless fire blades burst forth from the dragon-slaying blade, rushing towards the 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead. The 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead quickly used their respective skills to defend against the attack. Power of the Stars. After defending against the Flame Blade Technique, the 9th-tier crazy bull shouted, and the color of his star-studded stone axe turned crimson. He raised the star-studded stone axe and flew towards Yili at lightning speed. Black Cloud Sword. The 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead also shouted coldly, and the thousand-catty heavy sword emitted a demonic light, looking quite terrifying. Yili took a few steps back, a mocking expression appearing on his face. He thought to himself that ninth-tier dark race beings were indeed different, especially when there were two of them. Dealing with them would be a bit tricky. Primordial demon slash. One word at a time he spoke slowly. Suddenly, 3,000 god and demon phantoms attacked the ninth-tier crazy bull and the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead. After consuming the berserk potion, Yili's strength had even surpassed that of a ninth-tier dark race member. It was just that there were two of them. The ninth-tier crazy bull and the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead were horrified. Even if they used all their strength, they couldn't have imagined that Yili could unleash such a terrifying attack. They had thought that, aside from the Apocalypse Legion, Yili was just a paper tiger. But they had never expected the situation to turn out like this. The ninth-tier crazy bull and the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead had no time to dodge, because the 3,000 god and demon phantoms were too fast. So they could only defend themselves by using their strongest skills. Boom! The attack from the 3,000 god and demon phantoms hit the ninth-tier crazy bull and the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead. Both of them were seriously injured, and at the same time, the effects of the berserk potion had worn off. The ninth-tier crazy bull and the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead exchanged glances. Suddenly, they both had the same thought in their minds. That was to escape. Chapter 324. Frenzied escape. Yili thought that he had underestimated the power of ninth-tier dark race members. He had expected that, after the effects of the berserk potion wore off, he could at least kill one of them. He didn't want to continue drinking the berserk potion, because he might fall into a deep sleep again, and he didn't want to be unconscious for a dozen days or more. After being hit by the 3,000 god and demon phantoms, the ninth-tier crazy bull and the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead had the idea of fleeing for their lives. They didn't know if Yili would launch another terrifying attack at them. At this point, the Apocalypse Legion had killed countless crazy bull beings, but their numbers were still overwhelming. Dark King Yili, for the injuries you inflicted upon me today, I will return them to you 100-fold in the future. Let's hope we meet again under different circumstances, the ninth-tier crazy bull said coldly to Yili. Retreat! With that command from the ninth-tier crazy bull, the crazy bulls quickly fled the area. Their speed was the fastest they had ever reached since birth, and they wished they had grown a few extra legs. Yili had no intention of pursuing them. He was already too exhausted to chase them, and he thought that being a ninth-tier evolved being was still too weak. If he had been a ninth-tier evolved being, neither the ninth-tier crazy bull nor the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead would have been able to escape. During the escape of the crazy bull, the Apocalypse Legion killed many crazy bulls, and the ground was already covered in blood. Xiaxi hid in a corner, watching this scene. There were no words to describe her feelings at this moment. Only now did she understand what it meant to be a frog in a well. From birth, she had been an outstanding talent, and very few of her peers could compare to her. This had led to her developing a cold and aloof personality, but now, she understood that her pride in her talent was laughable in the eyes of some people. Yili put the dragon-slaying blade back into the system space. His face, which had been as pale as jade, was now even paler. This was a side effect of the berserk potion. Drinking just one bottle wouldn't cause him to fall into a deep sleep, but it would leave him extremely weak. Ada, by Wawa, Hongye, Yutong, Swordsman All Chi, and Bone Maiden gathered around Yili. Master! The 6 zombies called out in unison. Yili nodded, and then found a place to sit down. He needed to recover slowly. Although he hadn't killed the 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead, they were definitely seriously injured. It was unlikely that they would recover anytime soon. Yili thought that he should find the Heart of Darkness first. The Heart of Darkness was the heart of a 10th-tier dark race, and it might have some unexpected effects for him. Just like when he ate the purgatory fruit, he had comprehended the ancient demon tome. If he found the Heart of Darkness and consumed it, he might gain access to other incredible attack skills. Xiaxi walked up to Yili and, with a fearful look in her eyes, asked softly, Yili, why do they call you Demon King Yili? She had wanted to ask this question for a long time, but had been too afraid to do so. Now her curiosity got the better of her, and she mustered the courage to ask. Yili smiled faintly. Perhaps they think I'm approachable. Xiaxi was taken aback. She glanced at Yili's somewhat pale face and asked, Yili, are you injured? Chapter 325. Journey to the Dark Land. Yili didn't answer Xiaxi's question. It was already evening, and the setting sun painted half the sky red like a burning cloud. Well, stay here for the night, Yili said slowly. He needed some rest. He found a place and lay down. He slept through the night, and woke up the next morning. Zombie Treasure Chest X6. Yili opened the zombie chests with a single command. 800 genetic points, 800 strength points, 800 speed points, 800 defense points. A super treasure map. After a night's rest, Yili's energy had fully recovered, and his face, once pale, now showed a healthy color. Luck was like chewing a piece of gum. Once it started, you couldn't stop. A super treasure map. Could it be? Yili suddenly thought of an astonishing possibility. The treasure of this super treasure map might be the Heart of Darkness. What an incredible possibility. Without further thought, Yili activated the super treasure map. Coordinates Dark Land. The coordinates of the Dark Land appeared in Yili's mind. Yili smiled faintly. Just from the name Dark Land, he knew it was no ordinary place. Perhaps it really was the Heart of Darkness. He took out a box of food from the system space. After accumulating for so many days, there were countless boxes of food in the system space. After eating their fill and drinking, Yili and Xiaxi set off for the Dark Land. The Dark Land was a considerable distance from the ruined city. Yili and Xiaxi slowly walked out of the city. Along the way, they encountered many dark races and zombies, as well as some animals infected by the zombie virus. Yili killed the dark races and the animals infected by the zombie virus with ease. He synthesized a first-tier male zombie and a first-tier female zombie. As they got closer to the Dark Land, Yili heard some commotion. We, the Golden Wind Exploration Team, are secretly heading to the Dark Land. Do you know why? Why? I've received reliable information that the Heart of Darkness is hidden in the Dark Land. What? More than a dozen men were stunned. Such news was explosive to them. Yili glanced at the men's levels and found that all of them were fourth-tier evolved beings, which was not bad. Is the Heart of Darkness really in the Dark Land? One of the fourth-tier evolved beings asked incredulously. That's right. The team leader and deputy team leader should be arriving soon. Let's wait here, one of the men replied. Soon, more than a dozen men sat down and began to rest. Listening to the conversation among the dozen or so men, Yili smiled faintly. Just as he had thought, the treasure of this super treasure map was indeed the Heart of Darkness. Yili approached, with Xiaxi following closely behind. One of the Golden Wind Exploration Team members was discussing the Dark Land with his companions when he suddenly froze in disbelief and rubbed his eyes. The other members of the Golden Wind Exploration Team also noticed and followed his gaze. When they saw what the man was looking at, they were all dumbfounded. Humans? A man and a woman? The more than a dozen members of the Golden Wind Exploration Team couldn't believe that two humans had appeared before them. Just as the Golden Wind Exploration Team members were stunned, Yili and Xiaxi had already arrived in front of them. Chapter 326. I've reserved the Heart of Darkness. The members of the Golden Wind Exploration Team were all dumbfounded. They never expected to encounter humans here. And, just a moment ago, Yili and Xiaxi were in the distance, and they couldn't see their faces clearly. Now Yili and Xiaxi were right in front of them, and they were shocked to their core. They are too good-looking, aren't they? The members of the Golden Wind Exploration Team couldn't have imagined that there were humans in this world who looked so good. Yili had a handsome and refined appearance with starry bright eyes. Especially his eyes, once seen, could never be forgotten. It was as serene as a tranquil night, and as deep as a boundless sea. Xiaxi's face was delicate as jade, her long black hair cascading down like a waterfall, making her look like a fairy descended from heaven. Have you seen enough? Yili spoke calmly. The members of the Golden Wind exploration team snapped out of their daze at his words. Why are you here, little brother? One of the fourth-tier evolved beings asked with hostility, looking at Yili. As soon as he said this, more than a dozen members of the Golden Wind exploration team looked at Yili, wondering how Yili would answer. Yili smiled faintly. Are you qualified to know why I'm here? A dozen members of the Golden Wind exploration team were shocked. They didn't expect Yili to say such a thing. Hee, I've explored the Falling Rock mountain range for so many years, but I've never seen such an arrogant person. I think you probably don't know how cheap human lives have become since the apocalypse broke out. A fourth-tier evolved being said disdainfully. All the members of the Golden Wind exploration team wore contemptuous smiles. In their eyes, Yili was just an ignorant person. You just said the heart of darkness was in the dark land, right? Yili spoke slowly, and his expression remained unchanged. As soon as they heard this, the members of the Golden Wind exploration team all understood. Yili's purpose for coming here was the same as theirs, to find the heart of darkness. That's right. The heart of darkness is definitely in the dark land. A fourth-tier evolved being said with a smile. The members of the Golden Wind exploration team were not worried, because Yili and Xiaxi were really not worth mentioning in their eyes. They could naturally tell that Xiaxi was a Tier 3 evolved being, but they couldn't tell Yili's realm. However, they believed Yili's level couldn't be high, as even a first-tier evolved being could suppress their levels. Someone who was with a third-tier evolved being couldn't possibly be a powerful individual. Xiaxi shook her head when she saw this. These people had spoken so arrogantly in front of Yili, and she already knew what their fate would be. Since the heart of darkness is in the dark land, you can leave. The heart of darkness has already been reserved by me, Yili said calmly. The members of the Golden Wind exploration team were all stunned. Even if they preferred to believe that the apocalypse hadn't occurred, they couldn't deny that Yili had become incredibly arrogant. Do you really not know how to write the word death? A fourth-tier evolved being stared at Yili. In the apocalypse, except for the base cities, human lives were as cheap as grass, especially in the wilderness. Yili's expression remained unchanged as he heard this. It was as if he hadn't heard at all. He looked around and picked up a small branch. With the small branch, he drew a character on the ground that looked like the word death. Is this how you write death? Yili asked calmly. Chapter 327. How do you write the word death? The members of the Golden Wind exploration team were infuriated by this scene. You brat, I think you're asking for trouble, shouted a fourth-tier evolved being in anger. Yili smiled calmly. I neither accept toasts nor threats, because no one is qualified to have a drink with me. His words left the members of the Golden Wind exploration team seething with rage. You're looking for death. With a swift motion, a fourth-tier evolved being unsheathed a Nepalese cookery knife and swung it fiercely at Yili. The Nepalese cookery knife in the fourth-tier evolved being's hand was custom-made, extremely powerful, and gleamed with cold light. Yili sighed inwardly. Why were there always so many uncultured flies around? Flies should have their own self-awareness. Without any attempt to dodge, Yili acted as if he hadn't noticed the Nepalese cookery knife coming towards him. The members of the Golden Wind exploration team saw this and were delighted, as they had thought that Yili was acting so arrogantly because he had some strength. Now it seemed that they were mistaken, not just mistaken but profoundly so, because Yili had been scared out of his wits and didn't know how to avoid it. The members of the Golden Wind exploration team could easily imagine how tragic Yili's fate would be. Xiaxi was also shocked. She never expected Yili to stand there without dodging. If the Nepalese cookery knife struck, Xiaxi couldn't even finish her thought. The Nepalese cookery knife in the hands of the fourth-tier evolved being had already struck Yili's body heavily. Clang! To everyone's astonishment, the Nepalese cookery knife made a sound as if it had collided with steel when it struck Yili's body. What? The members of the Golden Wind exploration team couldn't help but gasp in amazement. The Nepalese cookery knife made a sound as if it had collided with steel when it struck Yili's body? This was a knife. And it was a custom-made Nepalese cookery knife. They couldn't even begin to imagine how tough Yili's body must be. No way, this can't be happening. How could my Nepalese cookery knife be like this? The fourth-tier evolved being exclaimed in shock. Yili smiled faintly. Nepalese cookery knife? You mean the thing you just tried to hit me with? With those words, Yili slowly raised 2 fingers and placed them on the Nepalese cookery knife, then twisted his fingers lightly. Crack. With a crisp sound, the Nepalese cookery knife shattered into pieces. How was that possible? The sound of steel colliding with Yili's body had left them witnessing the most unbelievable scenes in history. And now Yili broke the knife with his bare hands. Yili secretly smiled. Ants were easily shocked. As a Tier 8 evolved being, the defense of his body was beyond the imagination of these Tier 4 evolved beings. More than a dozen members of the Golden Wind exploration team were already dumbfounded. They had thought that Yili was scared silly when he didn't dodge just now, but now they realized that they had made a huge mistake. At this moment, there were no words that could describe the shock of these dozen genetic warriors. They had never been so shocked since they were born. Xiaxi let out a sigh of relief. When Yili didn't dodge just now, it had startled her. But now, she finally understood that someone like Yili had no need to worry about anything at all. Yili looked calmly at the dozen or so members of the Golden Wind exploration team. After a few seconds, he slowly spoke. So how do you write the word death? Chapter 328. The captain of the Golden Wind exploration team. The dozen or so members of the Golden Wind exploration team were terrified when they heard Yili's question. They had initially believed that Yili was like a lamb to the slaughter, and they were the executioners. But now, everything seemed to have been turned upside down. We are members of the Golden Wind exploration team, and our captain and vice captain are about to arrive, said a fourth-tier evolved being in a frightened tone. Yili smiled faintly. He despised being threatened more than anything else. Why did people always do this? In fact, if you don't attack me, there's still a chance for you. But now you're in a hopeless situation, Yili calmly stated. You're just skilled in martial arts at most. Our team captain is a 6th-tier evolved being. The 4th-tier evolved being attempted to intimidate Yili by mentioning their captain. But unfortunately, if Yili were to be frightened away, would he still be called Yili? What's going on? A sudden voice reached Yili's ears. He followed the voice and saw 2 middle-aged men approaching. Both men appeared to be around 40 years old, with one being a 6th-tier evolved being, and the other a 5th-tier evolved being. It's the captain and vice captain, exclaimed one of the members of the Golden Wind exploration team. Upon seeing their captain and vice captain arriving, the members of the Golden Wind exploration team breathed a sigh of relief. The tension that had been building up in their throats finally subsided. Captain, he wants to compete with us for the Heart of Darkness. A Tier 4 evolved being pointed at Yili and said fiercely. The captain and deputy captain of the Golden Wind exploration team looked at Yili and looked him up and down before asking in a low voice. Little brother, do you want to compete with our Golden Wind exploration team for the Heart of Darkness? Hehe. The captain of the Golden Wind exploration team was taken aback. Why are you laughing? He couldn't understand why Yili was still able to laugh in this situation, and neither could the vice captain nor the other members. Only Xiaxi understood. She naturally knew that these people were like ants in front of Yili. Do you really think I am here to compete with you for the Heart of Darkness? Yili said lightly. The captain was puzzled. Could it be that you're not here to compete with us for the Heart of Darkness? Yili shook his head slowly. Your brain is a good thing, too bad you don't have one. Accusing me, Yili, of competing with you for the Heart of Darkness? Are you even worthy? Yili slowly asked. Silence, a long silence. The captain of the Golden Wind exploration team would never have dreamed that Yili would utter such arrogant words. He had thought that Yili had come to compete with them for the Heart of Darkness. However, the vice captain of the Golden Wind exploration team snorted coldly. He glared at Yili and angrily shouted, Kid, do you know who we are? Yili smiled again. Aren't you just ants? With this statement, everyone in the Golden Wind exploration team was furious. The vice captain was even more enraged. "Kid, we are the Golden Wind exploration team." He assumed that anyone who dared to enter the inner circle of the Falling Stone Mountain range must have heard of the reputation of his Golden Wind exploration team. But unfortunately, he never would have imagined that Yi Li's face remained calm and unaffected by their threats. "Kid, I'll give you a chance to leave this place, or else don't blame me for being impolite," the vice captain shouted in anger. Chapter 329. Turn them all into zombies. Upon hearing these words, the members of the Golden Wind exploration team couldn't help but smile. Although the scene of Yi Li's body enduring a blade and breaking it with a single hand had been terrifying, they assumed it was merely a display of martial arts skill. Now that the captain and vice captain were present, they wondered how Yi Li could still be so arrogant. Hee, Yi Li smiled again. Upon seeing the smile on Yi Li's face, the vice captain of the Golden Wind exploration team became even angrier. "Brat, you can still laugh?" He really didn't understand how a person could still laugh when he was about to die. "Why wouldn't I smile? Don't tell me you don't realize that you're already dead?" Yi Li said calmly. When these words came out, everyone from the Golden Wind exploration team was stunned. He still dared to say such things. "You could have lived peacefully, but unfortunately, you've provoked me, Yi Li. How about one turn you all into zombies?" Yi Li suggested. "Turn us into zombies?" The members of the Golden Wind exploration team were dumbfounded. They couldn't fathom what Yi Li meant. Yi Li didn't want to waste more words on them, and released Alda from the system space. When the Golden Wind exploration team suddenly saw Alda appear, they all instinctively took 3 steps back. But when they looked into Alda's eyes, they were even more horrified. "ANI 9th tier zombie?" The captain of the Golden Wind exploration team widened his eyes, finding it hard to believe. The others were no different. Their eyes were wide open, and the terror on their faces was beyond description. Even if they racked their brains, they couldn't have imagined that a 9th tier zombie would appear. "Alda, turn them into zombies," Yi Li said calmly. As he spoke, Alda began to take action. The strongest members of the Golden Wind exploration team were only 6th tier evolved beings, and in front of Alda, they were pitifully weak. In an instant, all the members of the Golden Wind exploration team were turned into zombies. The captain and vice captain of the Golden Wind exploration team saw this and were terrified. They turned and fled at the fastest speed they had ever achieved in their lives. However, if they managed to escape from Alda, was Alda still Alda? Roar! Alda roared and swiftly caught up to the captain and vice captain, turning them into zombies as well. Yi Li opened the synthesis grid in his mind and synthesized all the members of the Golden Wind exploration team into zombies. Not bad, he managed to create a 3rd tier male zombie. After putting Alda and the 3rd tier male zombie into the system space, Yi Li looked at Xiaoxi and said, "Let's go." Xiaoxi nodded. After spending several days with Yi Li, she had come to understand that in the face of events, Yi Li remained unfazed, no matter what happened. As soon as Yi Li took a step forward, the sound of helicopter rotors could be heard. Whir, whir, whir. In an instant, a strong wind began to blow. Yi Li nodded slightly. He saw 2 armed helicopters hovering in the sky about to land. There were prominent letters on the helicopters. Xia. Xiaoxi was surprised. "My family's helicopters." 2 armed helicopters began to descend, and more than a dozen people disembarked. "Dad!" Xiaoxi called out to a man in his 50s who appeared to be about 50 years old. She rushed over to him. The man was taken aback. "Xia, you're not dead." Chapter 330. Xiaoxi leaves Dad. "What are you saying?" Xiaoxi looked at the middle-aged man and said. The middle-aged man quickly patted his forehead and said, "Xia, Gubai said you died inside the inner area of Falling Stone Mountain, and he was quite certain of it. So I led people to come and look for you. Thank goodness you're really okay." Xiaoxi had mixed feelings upon hearing this. She secretly glanced at Yi Li. If it weren't for him, she would have become the wolf's prey a long time ago. The middle-aged man was named Xia Hong. the head of the Xia family in the Sky Blue Base City, an 8th-tier evolved being. Sire, who is he? Xia Hong looked at Yi Li and asked. Dad, he. Xia Shi hesitated and didn't know how to explain to her father. She was afraid that speaking the truth might displease Yi Li. Seeing that Xia Shi wanted to say something but hesitated, Xia Hong became a little puzzled. He looked at Xia Zai's face and became even more puzzled. He remembered that Sierra used to be as cold as ice. Why did she seem to be? Xia Hong was sure that something must have happened in the past few days to change Sierra's personality. And the young man in front of him, he must be the key to this transformation in Sierra's personality. Thinking of this, Xia Hong walked up to Yi Li and looked at his face. He couldn't help but be shocked. When he was young, he was undoubtedly a heartthrob in the Sky Blue Base City, and he had captured the hearts of countless girls. However, compared to Yi Li, it was like one in the sky and the other on the ground. Who are you? Xia Hong asked Yi Li. Yi Li looked at Xia Hong indifferently. Xia Hong was dressed in a military uniform and appeared to be around 50 years old. Despite his age, he exuded a powerful and dignified aura, and his face seemed light golden. Do you think I need to answer you? Yi Li replied calmly. When these words came out, not only Xia Hong, but also all the genetic warriors from the Xia family who had come were shocked. None of them had ever heard anyone speak to the family head in such a manner. Xia Hong was stunned as he stared at Yi Li. He was also a bit dazed. As a prominent figure in the Sky Blue Base City, and an 8th-tier evolved being, he had never encountered someone like Yi Li before. Since you're her father, take her away from here, Yi Li said calmly. Having Xia Zai's father here was convenient. It was a good opportunity to take Xia Shi away. At this point, Yi Li still had no idea about the level of danger within this dark land. Xia Hong frowned when he heard Yi Li's words. He felt as though Yi Li was ordering him, and he had never encountered such a person before. Noticing that something was amiss, Xia Shi quickly walked to her father's side. Dad, let's go back, Xia Shi said to Xia Hong. Although she felt a bit reluctant to leave Yi Li, since Yi Li had said so, she had to go back. Xia Hong had originally wanted to say something to Yi Li, but Xia Shi forcibly pulled him away. She understood that with Xia's family members present, they were no match for Yi Li and the Apocalypse Legion. She didn't want the Xia family members to be turned into zombies. The two armed helicopters began to take off, and soon disappeared from Yi Li's sight. Yi Li thought that he would enter the Dark Land next. He released the army of the post-apocalyptic world from the system space, and slowly walked towards the Dark Land. In no time, Yi Li entered the Dark Land. It was a pitch-black land with no signs of life. Sunlight could barely penetrate, and it sent shivers down one's spine. What met Yi Li's eyes were terrifying graves, one after another. Chapter 331. An ancient zombie. These graves and the tombstones must have been there for a long time, and the inscriptions on them have become blurry. Looking at these graves, Yi Li couldn't help but think of the West Mountain Burial Mound, where there were also a lot of graves. Yi Li wondered if the Heart of Darkness was in these graves. Could it be that he had to dig up each of these graves one by one? Yi Li pondered for a few seconds, realizing that this might be the only way. Just as he was about to start, a black light appeared not far away. Following the black light, Yi Li found it peculiar, and decided to walk towards it. After just a few steps, the black light slowly rose. Yi Li stared at the black light, feeling somewhat stunned. The Heart of Darkness? Inside this black light was a heart that was still beating, looking extremely strange. After a few seconds of observation, Yi Li was certain that the heart within this black light was indeed the Heart of Darkness. Immediately, Yi Li reached out with a hand, ready to grab hold of the Heart of Darkness. However, it seemed like the Heart of Darkness wanted to evade, but it couldn't escape Yi Li's grasp. The Heart of Darkness was firmly seized by Yi Li and continued to beat incessantly. Just as Yi Li was about to examine the Heart of Darkness carefully, suddenly, countless desolate graves cracked open. Hands emerged from the graves, and if an ordinary person were here, they would likely have been scared to death. The creatures coming out of the graves, although they were also zombies, were somewhat different from the ones Yili had encountered before. That was because these zombies were all wearing armor and wielding spears. Could they be ancient soldiers? Roar! Roar! Hundreds of ancient zombies howled, as if they were feeling the joy of seeing daylight again. A few seconds later, Yili understood. These ancient zombies must have been infected by the heart of darkness to become zombies. This place must have been where the ancient soldiers were buried, and the reason they emerged from their graves was probably because he had captured the heart of darkness. These were just ordinary zombies, and Yili found it strange, but didn't feel threatened at all. The hundreds of ancient zombies naturally noticed Yili, and they charged towards him like thirsty people in the desert suddenly finding water. Roar! Roar! Yili raised his finger, and golden spiritual light began to wrap around it. Then he fired it like a machine gun. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. With countless sounds of breaking wind, over 100 ancient zombies fell to the ground. Yili wanted to examine the heart of darkness he held in his hand, but he never expected that there would be someone else. Swish! Suddenly, a cold light flashed in the air. Yili naturally dodged, feeling bewildered. Could there be traps or ambushes here? As he looked ahead, his face lit up. Standing 10 steps away from him was a zombie, a third-tier zombie wearing golden armor and wielding a huge halberd. This zombie was as tall as Ada and looked extremely imposing, looking like an unrivaled fierce general who used to charge into battle in ancient times. At first glance, Yili knew that this zombie would be the 7th one he would cultivate. Suddenly, the zombie lunged at Yili. In Yili's opinion, a Tier 3 zombie could be defeated with a single finger. He raised his finger and activated the One Yang finger. This zombie instantly lost its combat power. Chapter 332. Zombie Long Yu. This ancient zombie was a third-tier zombie. Yili checked the system space and found that there was a third-tier male zombie in there, which had just been synthesized using the members of the Golden Wind exploration team. He opened the synthesis grid in his mind and dragged the third-tier male zombie onto the ancient zombie. The ancient zombie transformed into a 4th-tier zombie. Master! The ancient zombie awkwardly called out to Yili. Yili thought he should give this zombie a name. What should he call it? After a few seconds of contemplation, Yili came up with a name. How about Long Yu? From now on, I'll call you Long Yu, Yili said slowly to the ancient zombie. Yes, master, Long Yu replied respectfully. Now he had cultivated another zombie, and the Apocalypse Legion had a total of 7 zombies. But now, Yili looked at the heart of darkness in his hand. According to legend, this black heart was the heart of a 10th-tier dark race member left behind after death. Without much thought, Yili swallowed the heart of darkness in one gulp. Ding! Congratulations to the host for acquiring the S-level skill, Sky Demon Tyrant Blade Technique. Congratulations to the host for upgrading the Ancient Devil Tome to the 4th level. Congratulations to the host for becoming a 9th-tier evolved being. Hiss! Just as Yili expected, he acquired a new skill and had unexpected surprises. The Ancient Devil Tome was upgraded to the 4th level, and he had become a 9th-tier evolved being. Now that he was a Tier 9 evolved being, plus the 4th level of the Ancient Devil Tome, if he fought the Tier 9 Crazy Bull and the Tier 9 Skeleton Undead again, they would definitely die. Now there's a new member. Yutong nibbled on her finger. He looks quite handsome, hee. Wawa giggled. But it seems like he's only a 4th-tier zombie, Alda said. Yili smiled. Don't worry. Long Yu will soon be at your level. Now, it was time to take revenge. Yili smiled faintly. He was very unhappy that the Tier 9 Crazy Bull and heavy sword-wielding undead had escaped. With the Apocalypse Legion stored in the system space, he walked out of the Dark Land. He originally thought the Dark Land was very dangerous, but it seemed it was just SOSO. He didn't know where the 9th-tier Crazy Bull and heavy sword-wielding undead had fled to, so he had to find out. After thinking for a few seconds, he decided to go to the Abyssal Gorge to inquire. Activating his swift steps, he arrived at the Abyssal Gorge. After jumping down the abyss, Yili reached the entrance of the underground palace. Outside the underground palace, There were a dozen third-tier heavy sword-wielding undead guarding it. They were originally discussing something, but when they saw Yili approaching, they were all frightened out of their wits. Duh! Demon King Yili? The scene where Yili had displayed the 3 unparalleled strikes outside the underground palace last time was something they would never forget. Let your new leader come out and see me, Yili said slowly. As soon as the dozen third-tier heavy sword-wielding undead heard this, they didn't dare to hesitate, and all rushed inside. Before long, all the heavy sword-wielding undead came out, led by an 8th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead. Demon King Yili, do you really think my heavy sword-wielding undead tribe is easy to bully? The 8th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead stared at Yili fiercely. The entire heavy sword-wielding undead tribe was in shock, and they naturally knew how terrifying Yili was. I'm not here to exterminate you. Don't worry, Yili said indifferently. When these words came out, the heavy sword-wielding undead tribe was all stunned. He wasn't here to exterminate them? Demon King Yili, since you're not here to destroy us, what are you here for? The level 8 heavy sword-wielding undead stared at Yili. Chapter 333, King Kong Ape Tribe Hehe. I go wherever I want. Who can stop me? Yili looked indifferently at the 8th-tier, heavy sword-wielding undead. The 8th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead was taken aback. Demon King Yili, what do you want? I want to know what major forces are present within the inner area of the falling rock mountain range, aside from the heavy sword-wielding undead tribe and the crazy bulls, Yili said slowly. The heavy sword-wielding undead tribe was surprised by Yili's unexpected question. In the inner area of the falling rock mountain range, besides the heavy sword-wielding undead tribe, there is also the King Kong Ape tribe. The 8th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead replied. Although he didn't know why Yili was asking this, he knew that if he didn't answer, the consequences would be beyond his imagination. Yili thought that the 9th-tier crazy bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead might have fled to the King Kong Ape tribe. How do I get to the King Kong Ape tribe? Yili continued to inquire. It's to the south of the Abyssal Gorge, just keep going, the 8th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead answered. Immediately, Yili leaped into the air and left the underground palace. The entire heavy sword-wielding undead tribe was left baffled. They never expected Yili to just leave like that. After leaving the Abyssal Gorge, Yili activated his swift steps and headed south. At night, Yili suddenly saw a red light descending from the sky, like a meteor falling. It didn't take long for it to emit a deafening explosion. Yili thought it might be a meteor, and didn't think much of it. He continued to use his Godspeed steps towards the territory of the King Kong Ape tribe. Outside the territory of the King Kong Ape tribe, Yili spotted a few King Kong apes whispering to each other. King Kong apes were tall creatures, and the higher their tier the taller they were. The few he saw were all at the 3rd tier, standing at around 2 meters tall. There was a huge explosion last night, and now the leader and the tribe's elites have gone to the site. The leader seems to suspect that a shocking spiritual treasure fell from the sky. I feel it must be a shocking spiritual treasure. The leader of the heavy sword-wielding undead tribe and the leader of the crazy bull tribe have also gone. Yili was at a distance from the few 3rd-tier King Kong apes, and their voices were very faint, but his hearing was exceptionally sharp, so he heard everything clearly. He walked over and wanted to ask about the location of the incident. He initially thought it was a meteor, but now it seemed to be something else. As the few 3rd-tier King Kong apes were speaking, they suddenly noticed a young man approaching them. They were stunned and then rubbed their eyes because they couldn't believe their eyes. A human had actually appeared before them. However, no matter how hard they rubbed their eyes, there was still a young man standing before them. Suddenly, the few 3rd-tier King Kong apes burst into uncontrollable laughter. Ha ha ha, a human! It's actually a human! Immediately, the few 3rd-tier King Kong apes hurried over to Yili. Human, are you lost? One of the 3rd-tier King Kong apes asked Yili. Lost? Yili smiled faintly. Why waste time talking to this human? It's been so long since I've had human flesh, one of the 3rd-tier King Kong apes said. With that, one of the 3rd-tier King Kong apes pounced at Yili. As the saying goes, Natural disasters can be survived, but self-inflicted sins are unforgivable. Yili had only wanted to ask a few questions, but these third-tier King Kong apes seemed to insist on choosing their own fate. He had no choice but to oblige them. Chapter 334. Half of the Eastern Emperor Bell, a third-tier King Kong ape, rushed at Yili, but in Yili's eyes, third-tier King Kong apes were as insignificant as dust. Activating his heavenly spirit eye, a shocking golden light shot straight from his eyes. The third-tier King Kong ape that had charged at Yili was instantly pierced through and fell heavily to the ground. What? This. The other few third-tier King Kong apes widened their eyes, unable to believe what had just happened. They were in a state of shock. Yili smiled indifferently. In his eyes, these were just ants. How could they understand his true power? Yili calmly approached the other few third-tier King Kong apes, his face expressionless. Seeing Yili approaching, the few third-tier King Kong apes backed away, as if seeing a ghost coming to claim their lives, unable to stop retreating. Human, what do you want? We are the King Kong ape tribe. One of the third-tier King Kong apes said. Yili shook his head inwardly, wondering why there were always so many lowly flies threatening him. Speak up, where did your leader go? Yili asked slowly. The few third-tier King Kong apes were puzzled, not understanding why Yili was asking this question. Oh, our leader went to the strange stone forest. One of the third-tier King Kong apes answered in fear. The strange stone forest? This was the first time Yili had heard of this name. Just keep going east from here, until you see a stone forest. That's the strange stone forest, the King Kong ape explained. Yili nodded, and then looked at the few third-tier King Kong apes. Do you have any last words? Yili asked calmly. He had only intended to ask a few questions, but these few third-tier King Kong apes insisted on seeking their own doom. What else could he do? When the Tier 3 King Kong apes heard Yili's words, they were horrified. We are from the King Kong ape tribe. If you dare to do anything to us, you will definitely. The words of this King Kong ape were never finished because a terrifying blood hole appeared on its forehead, and it would never have the chance to finish speaking. The other two third-tier King Kong apes saw this and tried to flee. But how could they escape? Swoosh swoosh. With two wind-breaking sounds, the two escaping third-tier King Kong apes were dead. After retracting his finger, Yili activated his swift steps and headed east. It didn't take long for Yili to see a vast stone forest. This stone forest was incredibly large with strange rocks everywhere. There were standing rocks like blades and reclining rocks like tigers. Using his heavenly spirit eye, Yili saw a trace of smoke rising from the center of the strange stone forest. Suddenly, a cold smile appeared on Yili's face. There were the 9th tier Crazy Bull, the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead, and a giant King Kong ape that was at least 8 meters tall, followed by dozens of high-leveled King Kong apes. Among them, there was a strange bell, entirely red in color, with peculiar patterns on it. But the bell was only half, and the other half was missing. Looking at this bell, Yili couldn't help but shudder all over. Could it be one of the 10 great divine weapons, the Eastern Emperor Bell? Even though it was only half, it was enough to make people feel suffocated. The 9th tier Crazy Bull, 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead, and 9th tier King Kong ape all wanted to lift this half of the bell. But even if they exerted all their strength, they couldn't move it. Yili walked over. If this really was half of the Eastern Emperor Bell, then he had hit the jackpot coming to the Falling Rock Mountain range this time. Chapter 335. A human? What on earth is this? Even I, a crazy bull, can't lift it. The 9th tier Crazy Bull angrily exclaimed. Don't just blame yourself. Even I can't lift it. The 9th tier King Kong ape said. The 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead thought for a moment and then said. This bell is only half, but it's so heavy. Could it really be a priceless treasure? They also suspected it might be a treasure. But what kind of treasure is only half a bell? Suddenly, the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead seemed to remember something, and he stared in shock at the half-bell. Could this be one of the 10 great divine weapons, the Eastern Emperor Bell? As soon as these words were spoken, Not only the 9th tier Crazy Bull and King Kong Ape, but all the high-leveled King Kong apes were also shocked. The Eastern Emperor Bell? After careful consideration, they realized how astonishingly possible this was. It descended from the sky and was so heavy. Haha, brother skeleton, this might really be half of the Eastern Emperor Bell. The King Kong ape burst into laughter. We must try to move this Eastern Emperor Bell. The 9th tier Crazy Bull also laughed. After a few laughs from the King Kong ape, he suddenly remembered something and looked at the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead, saying, "That Demon King Yili." As soon as the words Demon King Yili were spoken by the King Kong ape, the faces of the 9th tier Crazy Bull and the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead instantly darkened. Demon King Yili, his Apocalypse Legion is all 6th tier zombies. We are no match for them. A few seconds later, the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead seemed to lose his energy, his voice filled with helplessness. The 9th tier Crazy Bull also felt somewhat helpless. Although he had boasted in the ruined city, saying things like "let's wait and see," he was just bluffing it. Since then, he had become afraid of Yili, deeply afraid. I think you're giving too much credit to that human, undermining your own confidence. Even if Demon King Yili and his Apocalypse Legion are strong, our King Kong ape tribe is not to be trifled with. The 9th tier King Kong ape said disdainfully. The 9th tier Crazy Bull and the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead exchanged a glance and gave a bitter smile. They had thought the same thing before, but the results were self-evident. Don't worry, as long as Demon King Yili and his Apocalypse Legion dare to appear in front of me, one will make them understand what fear is. For now, let's get this half of the Eastern Emperor Bell out. The 9th tier King Kong ape said. The other high-leveled King Kong apes also smiled coldly. They were used to being dominant in the falling rock mountain range. Who cared about Demon King Yili and his Apocalypse Legion? At this moment, a 6th tier King Kong ape looked in a certain direction. The 6th tier King Kong ape was stunned for a moment and thought he might have seen it wrong. He rubbed his eyes and looked again, and indeed, there was a young male human slowly approaching. A human! The 6th tier King Kong ape pointed in a certain direction and exclaimed. The 9th tier King Kong ape, the 9th tier Crazy Bull, the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead, and the other high-leveled heavy sword-wielding undead immediately followed the direction pointed. When they saw this, the 9th tier King Kong ape and dozens of high-leveled King Kong apes were all stunned. But the pupils of the 9th tier Crazy Bull suddenly contracted. As for the 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead, who had no eyes, he took 3 steps back, and his entire skeleton seemed to be on the verge of falling apart. Demon King Yili! The 9th tier Crazy Bull shouted. The 9th tier King Kong ape and dozens of high-leveled King Kong apes were also shocked. The Demon King Yili! Chapter 336. I'm here for 2 things. The 9th tier King Kong ape widened his eyes. He had heard the name Demon King Yili dozens of times in the past few days, but now he was finally seeing the real person. The 9th tier King Kong ape was an absolute king in the falling rock mountain range, even stronger than the 9th tier Crazy Bull and 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead. In recent days, the 9th tier Crazy Bull and 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead had been bragging about how formidable Demon King Yili was when they were around him. They said that Demon King Yili possessed 2 ancient divine weapons, the dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower. They also mentioned how terrifying Demon King Yili's Apocalypse Legion was. They spoke of the Fist God Zombie Ada, the Iron-Footed Zombie by Wawa, the Ice Zombie Hongya. From the words of the 9th tier Crazy Bull and 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead, it was not difficult to hear that Demon King Yili was an unparalleled force. As the absolute ruler of the falling rock mountain range, the 9th tier King Kong ape had heard more than enough of this praise for Demon King Yili. The 9th tier King Kong ape looked coldly at Demon King Yili, and a faint smile crossed his lips. So you are Demon King Yili? The high-leveled King Kong apes also examined Demon King Yili, wanting to know who he was and why he had made the 9th tier Crazy Bull and 9th tier heavy sword-wielding undead so afraid. After all, they were all 9th tier Dark Race members. Demon King Yili stopped in his tracks and calmly looked at the 9th-tier King Kong ape. He replied, "That's right, 1 a.m. Demon King Yili." The 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead exchanged glances, because the psychological trauma inflicted upon them by Yili was incredibly great, something they would never forget in their lifetimes. The 9th-tier King Kong ape smiled coldly and said, "Demon King Yili, you've been making quite a few waves in the Falling Rock Mountain range recently." It had been a long time since there had been such a tumultuous event in the Falling Rock Mountain range. It had always been the King Kong ape tribe, the Crazy Bull tribe, and the Heavy Sword-wielding Undead tribe. Yili's appearance changed the layout of the Falling Rock Mountain range drastically. "It's not a big deal. To me it's just a small matter," Yili replied nonchalantly. The 9th-tier King Kong ape's expression turned cold as he stared at Yili. "Demon King Yili, do you really think you can run rampant in the Falling Rock Mountain range?" The 9th-tier King Kong ape stood at a towering height of 8 meters, resembling a dragon with well-developed limbs and a simple mind. However, the 9th-tier King Kong ape was by no means as simple-minded as he appeared. Since Demon King Yili had managed to make the 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead so afraid, Yili must have some strength. "I'm here for 2 things," Yili said calmly. "Firstly, I came to kill the 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead. They escaped last time, and am not happy about it. Secondly, one want this half of the Eastern Emperor Bell. But I've changed my mind now. Seeing how terrified the 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead are of me, one decide not to kill them." Yili spoke slowly. Being feared by others was much better than being respected, a timeless truth. "Demon King Yili, are you really this arrogant?" The 9th-tier King Kong ape couldn't contain his anger. Yili smiled faintly and spoke slowly, one word at a time. "Yes, I have always been this arrogant." Silence, a deathly silence. "Yili, you really won't kill us?" A few seconds later, the 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead was the first to break the silence. "Of course not. If I say I won't kill you, then I won't kill you," Yili replied indifferently. Chapter 337. Say what you want to say. The 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead, upon hearing this, exchanged glances, as if communicating with their eyes. After a few seconds, they gritted their teeth and nodded heavily. "Very well then, we'll leave." With that, the 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead departed from the area. "Come back! What are you doing? Come back! Come back!" The 9th-tier King Kong ape shouted loudly at their retreating figures, but the 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier Heavy Sword-wielding Undead seemed to pay no attention at all, and didn't even turn their heads. Upon seeing this, dozens of high-leveled King Kong apes were left in disbelief. Were they really scared away just like that? Yili had always thought of himself as neither a good person nor a bad person, and he didn't need to explain his actions to anyone. "What about you?" Yili looked at the 9th-tier King Kong ape and asked calmly. The 9th-tier King Kong ape was momentarily stunned, then he glared fiercely at Yili. "Demon King Yili, what do you want?" Yili smiled and said, "If you want to die, or if your King Kong ape tribe wants to be exterminated, then come over. If you don't want that, then get lost." With these words, the 9th-tier King Kong ape's body shook. It had been many years, how many years since he had heard someone speak to him like this? "Demon King Yili." The 9th-tier King Kong ape gritted his teeth, his voice cold and resentful. Yili chuckled and thought that this 9th-tier King Kong ape was trying to display his dominance and anger. However, how could he dare to show anger in front of him? "Let me say it again, die or get lost." "I don't want to say it a third time," Yili said calmly. The 9th-tier King Kong ape's anger flared up, and he pounded his own chest hard, letting out a roar. "Demon King Yili, I'm gonna kill you." With that, the 9th-tier King Kong ape charged at Yili, and his huge body made the earth tremble. Yili looked a bit bored. After all, this 9th-tier King Kong ape was just a single individual, far from being a match for him. Then, Yili released his Apocalypse Legion from the system space. However, he didn't release Longyu, as Longyu was only a 4th-tier zombie. Ada by Wawa, Hongye, Yutong, Swordsman All Chi and Bone Maiden. 6 9th-tier zombies. The 9th-tier King Kong ape, upon seeing this, stopped in his tracks and stared wide-eyed. The largest his eyes had ever been in history. The 9th-tier Crazy Bull and 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead had told him more than 10 times that Demon King Yi Li's Apocalypse Legion had 6 9th-tier zombies. But he had never taken it seriously. Now, 6 9th-tier zombies were right in front of him. This. The 9th-tier King Kong ape couldn't believe his eyes, and the scene before him left him gasping for breath. Dozens of high-leveled King Kong apes were already scared out of their wits. 6 9th-tier zombies. They hadn't even heard of such a thing before. Come here and let my Apocalypse Legion see what you're capable of, Yi Li said calmly to the 9th-tier King Kong ape. Where could the 9th-tier King Kong ape still dare to attack? These were 6 9th-tier zombies. Demon King Yi Li, this is unfair. The 9th-tier King Kong ape steadied his emotions and stared at Yi Li. Yi Li was taken aback for a moment. Could it be that this 9th-tier King Kong ape still had something to say? This was interesting. Say what you want to say, Yi Li said calmly. Chapter 338. Sky Demon Tyrant Blade Technique. The 9th-tier King Kong ape stared at Yi Li and spoke coldly. Demon King Yi Li, one know you're strong, but right now, I'm not at my full strength. Yi Li smiled. Oh? How can you show your true strength then? My King Kong ape tribe's army has not arrived yet, Demon King Yi Li. If you're truly daring, do you dare let me call for reinforcements? The 9th-tier King Kong ape said. Yi Li shook his head inwardly. The act of decapitating an enemy general from among thousands of troops was something he had done many times since he transmigrated to this parallel world. This 9th-tier King Kong ape was already doomed, so why not agree to his request? Go ahead, Yi Li said calmly. With these words, not only the 9th-tier King Kong ape, but also dozens of high-leveled King Kong apes couldn't help but be delighted. Suddenly, the 9th-tier King Kong ape shouted loudly, "Send the signal!" As he spoke, a 6th-tier King Kong ape sent out a signal unique to the King Kong ape tribe. Like an arrow piercing through the clouds, thousands of troops came to meet. In no time at all, the earth began to shake violently. Countless King Kong apes rushed over, as if a dark tide was pressing down, completely surrounding Yi Li and his Apocalypse Legion. The 9th-tier King Kong ape's face began to glow with excitement, because Yi Li still had the dragon-slaying blade and the heavenly tower. If he could obtain them, his strength would increase by several levels, and he would no longer have to submit to the wilderness zone. Demon King Yi Li, I really admire you. The 9th-tier Crazy Bull and the 9th-tier heavy sword-wielding undead praised you so much that I thought you were very clever, the 9th-tier King Kong ape said smugly. Yi Li's face remained unchanged. He spoke slowly. In the falling rock mountain range, only one kind of person will die, and that is the foolish one. The dark race is no exception. The 9th-tier King Kong ape was taken aback, and then roared in anger after a few seconds. Demon King Yi Li, why are you not afraid at this point? Yi Li and his Apocalypse Legion were surrounded by his King Kong ape tribe. As long as he gave the order, Yi Li and his Apocalypse Legion would likely be wiped out in an instant. He couldn't understand why Yi Li was so indifferent. This was not just a few hundred King Kong apes. There were tens of thousands of them. Do you think I need to be afraid? Yi Li looked at the 9th-tier King Kong ape calmly. The 9th-tier King Kong ape gritted his teeth and became incredibly angry. He had never been this furious from birth until now. In that case, I'll let you die. Kill Demon King Yi Li and his Apocalypse Legion. With the 9th-tier King Kong ape's order, countless King Kong apes rushed toward Yi Li. Capturing the leader first was an old but eternal principle, and it was the same in this case. Yi Li gave an order to his Apocalypse Legion to attack the 9th-tier King Kong ape. In an instant, all 6 9th-tier zombies from the Apocalypse Legion leaped into the air and attacked the 9th-tier King Kong ape. Yi Li retrieved the dragon-slaying blade from the system space. These ignorant King Kong apes dared to surround him, so he would give them a taste of his blade first. Suddenly, Yili seemed to remember something. When he was in the dark zone, he had absorbed the heart of darkness and gained a skill that he hadn't practiced yet, so he decided to give it a try. Ding! Does the host want to practice the S-level attack skill Sky Demon Tyrant Blade technique? Yes. Practicing the S-level attack skill, Sky Demon Tyrant Blade technique. 10%, 30%, 60%, 100%. Practicing of the Sky Demon Tyrant Blade technique completed. Chapter 339. The situation is hopeless. The system's prompt sounded in Yili's mind. A slight smile appeared at the corner of Yili's mouth, and a wicked grin played on his face. King Kong apes from all directions were only a few steps away from him. He leaped into the air and activated the 4th level of the ancient demon tome. The demonic energy from the 4th level of the ancient demon tome was incredibly dense, and the sky became shrouded in dark clouds. Now, as a 9th-tier evolved being, coupled with the 4th level of the ancient demon tome, he knew how strong he had become without even needing to think about it. The King Kong apes were all horrified. They had never experienced such a suffocating feeling. Yili raised the dragon-slaying demon blade high and slowly uttered, "Sky Demon Tyrant Blade Technique." As he spoke, a formidable demon god phantom wielding a giant blade launched an attack with incredible speed. Boom! Instantly, a deafening explosion rocked the earth. The King Kong apes had not yet recovered, and they didn't know how many were dead or injured. Yili considered that the Sky Demon Tyrant Blade technique was not as powerful as the Primordial Demon Slash yet. After all, the Primordial Demon Slash was an SSS-level skill, while the Sky Demon Tyrant Blade technique was only an S-level skill. Just as the countless King Kong apes were recovering from the shock and looking at Yili in horror in midair, Yili raised the dragon-slaying blade again. Primordial Demon Slash. As he spoke, the blade fell heavily. 3,000 terrifying demonic phantoms attacked, moving at the speed of lightning. Another earth-shattering explosion shook the ground and caused it to tremble. Yili smiled faintly as he looked at Alda and the others, who were still engaged in battle, while the 9th-tier King Kong ape watched coldly. Yili activated the swift steps in midair and left behind only an afterimage in place. Swish! A terrifying cold light struck the ground instantly, bisecting dozens of King Kong apes. The 9th-tier King Kong ape watched Yili approach, inexplicably filled with fear. Quick! Stop Demon King Yili! Unfortunately, Yili was like a martial arts hero from a Chinese TV series. He was literally flying in the air. Yili used the swift steps and disappeared from his original position once again. A cold glint appeared first, followed by a slash like a dragon. Yili swung the dragon-slaying blade horizontally, and the terrifying blade aura struck toward the 9th-tier King Kong ape. The 9th-tier King Kong ape was horrified. Although he had formidable defenses, this was the dragon-slaying blade, one of the 10 great divine weapons. It was said to be able to cut through the heavens, let alone him. The 9th-tier King Kong ape quickly dodged, narrowly avoiding Yili's attack. He looked at the scene before him. While the King Kong ape tribe still had many King Kong apes, they couldn't rescue him, as the Apocalypse Legion blocked the way. The 9th-tier King Kong ape knew that the situation was hopeless, and decided to escape. Unfortunately, in Yili's eyes, the 9th-tier King Kong ape was already a dead man. If he could escape from Yili's hands, he would be the first person Yili admired. However, Yili would never have anyone he admired. He didn't have one now, and he wouldn't have one in the future. Yili activated the swift steps and swiftly launched an attack. The escape speed of a 9th-tier Dark Race member was fast, but it depended on whom they were trying to outrun. Compared to Yili's swift steps, the speed at which the Tier 9 King Kong ape escaped was not worth mentioning. In an instant, Yili had caught up with the Tier 9 King Kong ape. Yili stood in front of the 9th-tier King Kong ape, looking at him with a faint smile. Do you want to escape? Chapter 340. Death of the 9th-tier King Kong ape. The 9th-tier King Kong ape was horrified. He never expected Yili to catch up with him so quickly. Demon King Yili, you The ninth-tier King Kong ape's words were interrupted by Yi Li. I already gave you chance earlier, but you didn't cherish it. I have no choice. Yi Li said indifferently. Hearing this, the ninth-tier King Kong ape's expression turned cold. As the ruler of the Falling Stone Mountain Range, when had he been pushed to such a desperate situation? Demon King Yi Li, do you really want to exterminate me? We have no deep-seated enmity. The ninth-tier King Kong ape stared at Yi Li. Yi Li smiled faintly. This is how one do things. There's no need for reasons. Accept your fate. As he spoke, Yi Li raised the dragon-slaying blade and swung it horizontally. A cold radiance shot towards the ninth-tier King Kong ape. The ninth-tier King Kong ape roared in anger and thrust out a punch with tremendous power. The space seemed to shatter from the force. Boom! The cold radiance of the dragon-slaying blade collided with the ninth-tier King Kong ape's punch. Swish! Yi Li activated the swift steps, leaving behind only an afterimage. The ninth-tier King Kong ape, seeing this, widened his eyes and quickly searched for Yi Li's figure. When Yi Li appeared again, he was already behind the ninth-tier King Kong ape. Before the King Kong ape could react, the dragon-slaying blade had pierced towards his back. In a battle between experts, every move was deadly. The ninth-tier King Kong ape had formidable defenses, but in front of the dragon-slaying blade, his impressive defenses were insignificant. The ninth-tier King Kong ape let out a horrified scream. Blood spurted out continuously, and the scene could not be described with just one word: grim. The ninth-tier King Kong ape used all his strength to turn around. His eyes locked onto Yi Li. He clenched his fist, and an aura of malevolence enveloped it, as if he wanted to take Yi Li down with him. Suddenly, the ninth-tier King Kong ape's fist, filled with malevolence, struck heavily. This was his all-out attack. However, Yi Li's speed was incredibly fast. He activated the swift steps, and the ninth-tier King Kong ape's all-out attack couldn't even touch him. Sky Demon Tyrant Blade Technique. Yi Li leaped into the air, raising the dragon-slaying blade high, and releasing the Sky Demon Tyrant Blade Technique. A peerless demon god rushed towards the ninth-tier King Kong ape with great force. The King Kong ape had already exhausted all his strength with his previous attack. At this moment, the ninth-tier King Kong ape had no chance of withstanding this peerless demon god. Boom! The peerless demon god crashed into the ninth-tier King Kong ape's body. The ninth-tier King Kong ape died instantly and vanished. At this moment, Ada and the others were still in the midst of a fierce battle, and the strange stone forest was already soaked with blood. Yi Li pondered for a few seconds, and then kicked the body of the ninth-tier King Kong ape. The King Kong ape's body was sent flying onto the battlefield, creating a deep crater on impact. The high-leveled and low-leveled King Kong apes watched stunned. Yi Li came with his blade. He walked very fast as flying. The King Kong apes panicked. They didn't want to seek revenge for their leader. Instead, they wanted to escape. Primordial Demon Slash. 3,000 divine and demonic phantoms suddenly attacked, moving at the speed of lightning. Boom! Another earth-shattering explosion resounded. The remaining King Kong apes finally began to scatter in all directions, wishing they had more legs to run faster. Yi Li didn't pursue them. He had no interest in these King Kong apes. He looked towards the Crimson Bell not too distant. Chapter 341. Leaving the wilderness zone, Yi Li walked up to the half of the Crimson Bell in front of him. It was not a complete bell, but only half of it, with strange patterns on the surface. He speculated that this should be the Eastern Emperor Bell. Even the ninth-tier King Kong ape, the ninth-tier Crazy Bull, and the ninth-tier heavy sword-wielding undead combined couldn't move this Crimson Bell. Ding! Detected a fragment of one of the 10 great divine weapons, the Eastern Emperor Bell. Please pick it up, host. The system's voice suddenly appeared in Yi Li's mind. Yi Li's face lit up. It was just as he had expected. This was indeed one of the 10 great divine weapons, the Eastern Emperor Bell, even though it was only half of it. After placing the dragon-slaying blade into the system space, Yi Li placed his hands on the fragment of the Eastern Emperor Bell and lifted it upwards. This half of the Eastern Emperor Bell was instantly lifted, and Yi Li smiled, realizing how strong he was. Since this was only half of the Eastern Emperor Bell, it couldn't be touched or tested. After placing the fragments of the Eastern Emperor Bell into the system space, the system's voice once again appeared in his mind. Ding! Congratulations to the host for obtaining a chance to randomly draw a prize. Would you like to use it? Yes. Immediately, the virtual pointer began to spin in the roulette and stopped after a few seconds. Congratulations to the host for obtaining a super treasure map. Yi Li's face brightened. He had obtained another super treasure map. His luck was truly extraordinary. Open it. After opening the super treasure map, coordinates appeared in Yi Li's mind, and they were quite far from his current location, seemingly beyond the wilderness zone. Yi Li thought that he had spent enough time in the wilderness zone, and it was time to leave. Following the coordinates in his mind, Yi Li arrived at a small town. When he reached the small town, the coordinates in his mind suddenly disappeared. Yi Li was puzzled. The coordinates had never disappeared before when he reached his destination. Could this small town be the destination? It shouldn't be. When he arrived at the small town, there was still a considerable distance from the coordinates in his mind. Without thinking too much, Yi Li observed the small town in front of him. It was evident that this small town had also been subjected to the scourge of the undead, and was in a dilapidated state. Yi Li activated the Heavenly Spirit Eye to scan the small town, revealing that there were only a few scattered zombies in this small town. However, there were also a dozen or so scattered human genetic warriors, all of whom were teenagers. These teenagers were surrounded by the corpses of zombies. Yi Li wanted to ask if there was a base city nearby. He had spent enough time in the wilderness zone and felt like he was becoming a wild man. Shortly after, he walked towards the direction of the teenagers. Before long, he spotted more than a dozen teenage genetic warriors. May I ask if there is a base city nearby? Yi Li inquired. The group of teenagers were in decent condition in terms of the realm. All of them were first-tier evolved beings, around 15 or 16 years old. The sudden voice startled the teenagers, and they were taken aback. The teenagers stared at Yi Li in astonishment, and one of the bolder ones looked at him and said, Who are you? How did you get here? Yi Li was puzzled by the question. What did he mean? This is our Sky Blue Academy's primary trial ground. But you're not a student of Sky Blue Academy. The teenager continued. Sky Blue Academy? Yi Li pondered silently, feeling like he had heard this name before. She seemed to be from Sky Blue Base City. Could Sky Blue Academy also be related to Sky Blue Base City? Are you all from Sky Blue Base City? Yi Li asked. Chapter 342. Clawed zombies. The dozen or so teenagers were taken aback, and the bolder teenager replied to Yi Li, Yes, we're from Sky Blue Base City. They were all puzzled about where Yi Li had come from, because there was only one base city within thousands of kilometers, which was Sky Blue Base City. After thinking for a moment, Yi Li felt that the treasure marked on the super treasure map might be here in this small town. He had to search for it. Subsequently, Yi Li ignored the astonishment on the faces of the teenagers and continued to use the Heavenly Spirit Eye to investigate this inconspicuous small town. Who are you? Suddenly, a voice entered Yi Li's ears. Yi Li turned slowly and saw a middle-aged man in his 40s, a fifth-tier evolved being. Teacher Lin. The group of teenagers, who were around 15 or 16 years old, called out to the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at Yi Li with caution. He couldn't discern Yi Li's level, but his intuition told him that Yi Li was not an ordinary person. Yi Li, is this place the primary trial ground of your Sky Blue Academy? Yi Li asked. The middle-aged man was a teacher from the Sky Blue Academy, named Lin Shi. Lin Shi looked at Yi Li with disbelief. Are you from Sky Blue Base City? No. Yi Li shook his head. Lin Shi was stunned when he heard this. If Yi Li wasn't from Sky Blue Base City, where could he have come from? There was only Sky Blue Base City within thousands of kilometers. Could it be? Lin Shi suddenly thought of a shocking possibility. Yi Li might have come from the wilderness zone, because this small town was not too far from the outskirts of the wilderness zone. If I want to go to Sky Blue Base City, Which direction should I go? Yili asked Lin Shi. Since he had arrived at Sky Blue Base City, he thought he might as well visit it. It would be a shame not to, especially when he had a super treasure map that might lead to treasure in this small town. Lin Shi was about to speak when a cold laugh reached Yili's ears. Haha, I didn't expect so many humans in this crappy town. The dozen or so teenagers were startled and looked at the dark race member before them in amazement. It was a soul spirit. Yili had seen quite a few soul spirits before. This soul spirit was a 4th-tier dark race member, one level lower than Lin Shi. Lin Shi breathed a sigh of relief. It was evident that this 4th-tier soul spirit posed no threat to them. We're from Sky Blue Academy. If you don't want to die, get lost. Lin Shi shouted at the 4th-tier soul spirit. Kiki. The 4th-tier soul spirit chuckled and continued. With so many humans here, wouldn't I be a fool to leave? Soul spirits love to devour human souls and spirits. Come out, zombies. After the soul spirit shouted, suddenly, more than 100 zombies rushed out. Most of these zombies were first-level zombies. However, there were a few that caught Yili's interest. These zombies were second-level zombies, and what set them apart was their sharp claws, which gleamed with cold light. Yili had never seen clawed zombies like these before. He wondered if he could cultivate some of them. After all, in the Apocalypse Legion, besides generals, there also had to be soldiers. The dozen or so teenagers were taken aback by the sudden appearance of more than 100 zombies. Human, come here and let me eat your souls. The 4th-tier spirit soul giggled. Lin Shi sneered. I'm afraid these 100 zombies are not enough. Chapter 343. Kill in seconds. The 4th-tier soul spirit sneered and looked at Lin Shi with scorn. Human, you're too presumptuous. As he spoke, 2 more 4th-tier soul spirits emerged. Lin Shi was taken aback. He hadn't expected there to be 2 more 4th-tier soul spirits. Now, with 3 4th-tier soul spirits and 100 zombies, Lin Shi couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Human, do you think that's enough now? The 4th-tier soul spirit sneered at Lin Shi. Lin Shi gritted his teeth, but felt somewhat helpless. If he were alone, he would be confident in escaping. However, there were still over a dozen students with him. For a moment, the 5th-tier evolved being Lin Shi didn't know what to do. Haha, at this point, do you have anything worth hesitating about? Come over and let us devour your souls. This is your final end. One of the 4th-tier soul spirits chuckled. Lin Shi looked at the dozen or so students and said in a deep voice, Go quickly. The dozen or so students were still in shock, standing motionless like statues. Go, Lin Shi shouted. Only then did the students snap out of their daze. They hurriedly ran back. Wanna run? Attack them. The 4th-tier soul spirit shouted. Immediately, over 100 zombies charged forward. For a 5th-tier evolved being like Lin Shi, holding back over 100 zombies wouldn't be too difficult. However, the difficulty lay in dealing with the 3 4th-tier soul spirits. While Lin Shi withstood the onslaught of over 100 zombies, the 3 4th-tier soul spirits rushed towards the students from Sky Blue Academy. These students were only 1st-tier evolved beings, far from a match for the 3 4th-tier soul spirits. The students from Sky Blue Academy were horrified. The 3 4th-tier soul spirits chuckled and prepared to devour their souls. No, Lin Shi shouted. However, the 3 4th-tier soul spirits paid no heed to him. In their eyes, the souls of these students were already easy prey. At this critical moment, a figure appeared in front of the students from Sky Blue Academy. It was a young man in his early 20s, who was naturally Yili. Yili's face remained calm as he looked at the 3 4th-tier soul spirits. The 3 4th-tier soul spirits were taken aback. They hadn't seen how Yili had approached them. Could this human be a powerful individual? Leave, Yili said indifferently to the 3 4th-tier soul spirits. The 3 4th-tier soul spirits hesitated for a moment. One of them furrowed his brow and said, Human, stop pretending. You'll be next. Yili smiled. Since you don't want to leave, then stay. With that, Yili raised his hand, and golden spiritual light radiated from his fingers. Swish, swish, swish. With 3 wind-breaking sounds, the 3 fourth-tier soul spirits had completely dissipated in the air. The students from Sky Blue Academy were shocked by this scene, their jaws dropping in disbelief. Lin Shi was also dumbfounded. The ability to kill 3 fourth-tier soul spirits with a single strike was something he, as a 5th-tier evolved being, couldn't even imagine. Roar! Roar! The zombies continued to attack Lin Shi. However, these zombies were ordinary and posed no significant threat to him. Yili paid no attention to the astonished students. He walked to the edge of the zombie horde and said to Lin Shi, "Step aside. Let me handle this." Chapter 344. Arriving at Sky Blue Base City among the hundreds of zombies, there were several level 2 clawed zombies that Yili found quite interesting. He decided to synthesize a batch of them to play around with. While Yili effortlessly annihilated 3 fourth-tier soul spirits, Lin Shi became aware of Yili's terrifying power. He leaped out of the encirclement of zombies. Roar! Roar! The zombies rushed toward Yili. Among these zombies, the level 2 clawed zombies were of higher level and posed a slightly greater threat. Through observation, Yili found that these level 2 clawed zombies were much stronger than other level 2 zombies in terms of attack and speed. He raised his finger, and a shocking golden spiritual light shot out like a machine gun. The zombies instantly lost their combat abilities. Yili activated the synthesis grid in his mind and began synthesizing zombies. There were 3 clawed zombies. Yili synthesized the 3 clawed zombies to level 5 and checked their attributes. Clawed zombie, level 5 zombie. Zombie attribute speed. Zombie skill, steel blade. Yili thought their strength was not bad, but he wasn't sure how many of these clawed zombies were present in the different districts of Sky Blue Base City. The most important thing was to raise Long Yes level. Yili believed that the zombies he had cultivated so far were sufficient. Now it was time to create a real Apocalypse Legion. He placed the 3 level 5 clawed zombies into the system space, and then noticed that Lin Shi and the students from Sky Blue Academy were frozen in shock. Lin Shi was about to say something, but Yili interrupted him. "Don't worry, I'm not a member of the dark race," Yili said calmly. Lin Shi paused for a few seconds, then understood. In this vast world, there were all sorts of beings. If Yili were a member of the dark race, there would have been no chance for them to be saved. "Thank you for saving us, senior." Lin Shi quickly expressed his gratitude with a respectful salute. Yili waved his hand slightly. "It's nothing." "Senior, are you heading to Sky Blue Base City?" Lin Shi suddenly asked. Yili nodded. "Yes, it is." Lin Shi hesitated for a moment and then continued. "Senior, do you know anyone in Sky Blue Base City?" Lin Shi thought that if Yili was going to Sky Blue Base City to find someone, he might be able to help, as he had some connections in the city. "Just take me to Sky Blue Base City," Yili replied. Lin Shi didn't press further. He knew that powerful individuals often have peculiar temperaments, and probing too much could provoke them. The students from Sky Blue Academy looked at Yili with admiration. His display of power had undoubtedly won them over. Subsequently, Lin Shi led Yili in the direction of Sky Blue Base City. Sky Blue Base City was a medium-sized base city, with a population of over 60 million. It boasted formidable defenses and advanced technology. As they entered the outer city, Yili even spotted humanoid weapons, something he had only seen on television in China. Following Lin Shi into the outer city, they headed toward the main city. Sky Blue Base City's main city was extraordinarily luxurious, far surpassing many first-tier cities in China. "Senior, where are you heading now?" Lin Shi asked Yili. Yili thought that since he had arrived in such a bustling base city, he might as well take a look around. "You can go on your way. You don't need to worry about me," Yili said. Lin Shi nodded and said, "Senior, I'm a teacher at Sky Blue Academy. You are welcome to visit the academy." Chapter 345. Don't judge a book by its cover. After Lin Shi and the students from Sky Blue Academy left, Yili glanced at his tattered clothes and couldn't help but show a hint of dissatisfaction. He thought to himself that if he were in China, he would probably be mistaken for a beggar. Just as he was about to raise his head, he noticed the surprised looks of passers-by. It seemed that in Sky Blue Base City, it was impossible for someone dressed as shabbily as he was to appear. He should buy a few sets of clothes first. Yili opened the Point Mall. Now he no longer had to worry about points, so he exchanged some post-apocalyptic coins and activated his heavenly spirit eyes to find a shopping mall. Before long, Yili found a clothing store that seemed decent. He headed towards the store. Upon reaching the store, Yili was stopped by someone. "Sir, you can't enter," said the female attendant, looking at Yili with disdain. Yili couldn't help but smile inwardly. He didn't understand why he always encountered so many snobbish people. "Why can't I go in?" Yili asked calmly, looking at the young female attendant of his age. The female attendant's face showed a trace of disdain. She assessed Yili's clothes from head to toe, and her meaning was clear. Through the glass, Yili took a look at himself and was startled. His current appearance with a scraggly beard, disheveled hair, and tattered clothes did make him look like a beggar. "It seems like I've spent too much time in the wilderness. I almost turned into a wild man," Yili mumbled to himself. "Sir, please leave." The female attendant's voice rang in Yili's ears once again. Yili smiled. "You can see that my clothes are tattered. If one don't go in to buy some new ones, won't one have to be dressed like this all the time? Can you afford it? The clothes inside are something you can't even dream of wearing in your lifetime." The female attendant replied with even more disdain. Yili casually took out a handful of post-apocalyptic coins from his pocket and said, "Is this enough?" The female attendant was shocked. She couldn't have imagined that someone who looked like a beggar could easily produce so much money. Yili didn't pay any more attention to the female attendant. He strolled into the store. "Help me pick out several sets of well-fitting clothes," Yili calmly requested. Now that he knew Yili had money, the female attendant quickly helped him choose clothes. After trying on a few sets, Yili was satisfied and paid without hesitation. He didn't have a clear concept of money at this point. If he ran out of it, he could always exchange more in the Point Mall. At this moment, the female attendant finally realized how wealthy Yili was. "The clothes you picked for me are very good. These are tips for you," Yili said calmly. With that, Yili casually pulled out a handful of post-apocalyptic coins from his pocket and handed them to the female attendant. The female attendant was stunned, feeling a trembling sensation throughout her body. She accepted the post-apocalyptic coins that Yili handed over, and her palms couldn't help but feel hot. She had never received so much in tips before. The female attendant stared at the post-apocalyptic coins in her hand in amazement. She could hardly believe it was real. If she sent this money to her mother would be ecstatic. At the same time, she also understood the truth: don't judge a book by its cover. The sea is immeasurable, and people are unfathomable. When the female attendant raised her head to thank Yili, she realized that he had already disappeared without a trace. Chapter 346. Why are you here? Now that he had bought new clothes, Yili thought it was time to get a haircut. His hair was currently flowing down his shoulders. He entered a fairly decent barbershop and after getting his hair done, he went to a hotel. After taking a shower, he changed into his newly bought clothes. Yili stood by the mirror, looking at the person in the reflection. Not bad, Yili muttered to himself. It had been a while since he had enjoyed a proper meal in the wilderness zone. Since he was in Sky Blue Base City, he thought it was time to find a good place to eat. Afterward, Yili left the hotel and used his heavenly spirit eyes to survey the area, eventually finding a Western restaurant that seemed quite nice. Upon arriving at the restaurant, Yili took a seat by the window and ordered an expensive steak and red wine. Before he could start eating, a jarring voice reached his ears. "Don't you know this is my seat?" The voice was arrogant, causing everyone in the restaurant to look over. They couldn't help but start discussing the situation. "Oh, it's young Master Gu. This will be interesting." This guy took young Master Gu's seat. He's in for trouble. Who dares to provoke young Master Gu in Sky Blue Base City? The voices of the people in the restaurant naturally reached Yi Li's ears. However, he paid no attention to it, maintaining a calm and composed expression without even raising his head. Young Master Gu, a middle-aged, chubby man in his 40s, rushed over, his oily face filled with anxiety. This middle-aged man was the manager of the Western restaurant. A small restaurant like this naturally didn't dare to offend someone like Gu Bai. Are you trying to go out of business? Even my reserved seat has been taken by someone else, Gu Bai said coldly. The manager was startled by Gu Bai's words. He quickly looked at the terrified waiter next to him and shouted, "Do you want to lose your job? Do you even realize that it's young Master Gus' reserved seat?" The waiter was stunned and didn't know how to react. "What are you standing there for? Get that person to move to another seat," the manager ordered. The waiter hurried to Yi Li's side and said, "Sir, I'm really sorry, but this seat is reserved for young Master Gu." Before the waiter could finish his sentence, Yi Li interrupted him. "I don't like your voice. Let him come and talk to me himself," Yi Li said calmly. The waiter was now in a dilemma, not knowing whether to stay or leave. "I, Gu Bai, am somewhat of a figure in Sky Blue Base City. Today, I want to see who is so audacious as to sit in my reserved seat." Gu Bai, with disdain in his eyes, looked at Yi Li. Suddenly, he felt like he had seen this man's face before. "Is that so?" Yi Li put down his knife and fork and slowly raised his head. Gu Bai looked at Yi Li's face, and his pupils contracted rapidly. It's you." Gu Bai had seen this face in the Falling Rock mountain range, the Tier 1 evolved being. But at that time, there were so many ferocious wolves around. How did this person manage to survive? Could it be? Gu Bai thought of a possibility. Perhaps Xiaxi hadn't died, and she had used some treasure to save him. "I never expected you to survive. Truly surprising," Gu Bai said with a faint smile. "You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."